The Tanya teaches us that the most important part of the spiritual life is developing and creating a relationship with God. In other words, it is important, of course, to study the Torah, perform the mitzvah, fulfill the words and instructions of the Torah. But more importantly is the question of why. What's your motivation? What is driving you? And what are you accomplishing through all of that? And the answer should be that there's a relationship going on over here, an emotional connection between you and your Creator. Similar to any two people in this world who are trying to have a relationship with each other. So if a spouse is a dutiful spouse, they're always doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're always fulfilling their roles in managing the home, etc., etc. That's very nice, and that's important, and that's a strong commitment. But the other spouse wants more. They don't just want for the garbage to be taken out and the dishes to be washed. They want that too. But they want an emotional connection. They want the relationship. The relationship is vital. It's what can fuel the success of this union forever. And so the Hasidic teachings teach us that God doesn't just want that you're going to perform the mitzvot and the instructions of the Torah. God wants your heart. He wants the relationship. He wants to know that there's an emotional attachment over here. Which is why earlier in the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe made a very groundbreaking statement and said that a true mitzvah performance, a genuine one, is when it's inspired and motivated by a love for God. And a true refraining from not doing a sin is when it's inspired and motivated by the awe and respect for God. In other words, if one is engaging in a mitzvah or studying Torah or doing good things because of habit, because that's they were raised, because of some kind of guilt feeling, because of trying to create an impression, a reputation about themselves, you've done the mitzvah, which is very important, but there's no real relationship going on over there. There are all kinds of ulterior personal motives going on. It should never be because of habit, because that's how I was raised. It should always be inspired by a true emotional attachment to God. So, even the Benoni is our kind of guy, imperfect completely, a strong, raging animal soul within them. However, they learn how to master their behavior, as we've learned. To master the behavior in its fullest sense should be when one is learning to create moments of experiences where, as we have studied this, where they are using their mind in their full intellectual capacity to study, to explore, to understand, to contemplate. And that is arousing within their heart a true emotional arousal and attachment to love, to respect, to fear, to yearn, to desire, to attach to the Torah, to God, to that which is real. And that results in the performance of the mitzvah, the performance of good deeds. That is a genuine mitzvah. That's a genuine spiritual worship. And that's something even the Benoni can achieve, at least sometimes, when they put themselves into that zone. Now, the Alter Rebbe raises an important question. That's a question for the spiritual life, for some challenged people, or what seem to be challenged people, and it's a question for all of our, many people's relationships here in this world. Some people are not so emotionally expressive. I'm not talking about someone, or the Tanya is not talking about somebody who's emotionally handicapped with deep trauma and issues in their heart that they need to work on. And that's an important thing that they need to work, how to develop that, how to open themselves up to be able to connect and to feel and be vulnerable. But even somebody who is able to attach oneself to another. However, they're not the emotional type. They don't sort of break out with expressions and behaviors and words of love and endearment. They don't carry their emotions on their sleeves. Their heart doesn't throb. That's not the way they operate. Then how do they achieve this important emotional component to one's spiritual worship? Right? The Zohar says, a fascinating, important thing to keep in mind. The Zohar says that Ahava and Yira, which are the two primary emotions of love and awe and respect, they are wings. When you do a mitzvah, what ensures that the mitzvah can be transcending and can be elevated to heaven when it has wings to make it fly, to make it soar to heaven. So a mitzvah that has a deed, a performance, an action that has and is fueled by a love and a fear of God, that carries it to heaven. But if it's just a performance, an actual deed, but there's no true emotional component to it, then it sort of stays down here. It doesn't go to heaven. There's actually a very beautiful story of the Baal Shem Tov. Once the Baal Shem Tov was traveling, and it came late in the afternoon, he was in a distant town. He needed a synagogue, a minyan, to pray the mincha, the afternoon service. So he sent his gabbai, he sent somebody who was helping him to go find a synagogue they can pray. He goes scouting the streets and he finds a very large synagogue, plenty of space. It wasn't very full, where the Baal Shem Tov could come in with all of his students, his entourage, to pray there. So he brings the Baal Shem Tov and the group to that synagogue. The Baal Shem Tov takes one step into the synagogue and he says, no, we can't pray here. There's no room for us. It's already full. And the Gabbai was very, what do you mean it's very full? It's empty. There's so many spare empty seats over here. There's plenty of room for all of us. But you don't ask any questions. He finds another synagogue. This synagogue was a small shtibel. There was a lot of people there, and it was packed, and it was crowded. The Baal Shem Tov takes one step into that synagogue, and he says, there's plenty of space for us. Here we're going to pray the mincha service. Afterwards, the Gabbai asks the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi, what happened over here? The empty synagogue was full, the full synagogue was empty. How do you explain that? The Baal Shem Tov said, in that large synagogue, where there seemed to be plenty of physical space, but the prayers that were being made over there, the kinds of people who were there, there was no love, there was no awe, there was no emotional component to their prayers. So their prayers didn't have any wings to allow them to soar to heaven. And so the room down here was filled with prayers that never made it to heaven. There was no room for us to be there. It wasn't a place we wanted to be. The other synagogue, which was physically packed without much space, but their prayers were so emotionally charged, they had wings to fly to heaven. So there was plenty of space down here below. That's a place we want to be. So that describes the whole Tanya idea of evaluating and laying an importance and concentrating on the emotional component that drives one's service to God. Getting back to the issue at hand, what if somebody doesn't have the ability to truly emote in an expressive way, and they're putting so much effort to study and contemplate and meditate, and it's supposed to arouse the feelings of their heart, but it's not working as is being described over here? Does that mean that their avodah, their service, is going to be lacking the wings, lacking the emotional fuel to be able to carry it to heaven and connect in a strong bond with God? Dr. Rebbe says here, the answer is no. They too are able to experience a true relationship with God. And he says, there are two different kinds of emotions. Emotions we normally speak about are emotions of the heart, the feeling. So we actually have to truly one day, and not right now, but explore what defines intellect and what defines emotion. But intellect is the process of the mind. It's when a person is a state of being discerning and analyzing in a cold, detached way. You don't have any attachments when you're truly experiencing intellectual activity. You're actually from a distance analyzing and exploring and thinking and contemplating and weighing out all the different sides of the phenomenon. That's called intellect. Emotions, the feelings of the heart, are when you are now attached to something and you're no longer objective anymore. You're truly subjective. You're connected. You're emoting in a way that, how does it make me feel? It makes me feel in a way that I want to attach to it with love, and it makes me feel in a way that I want to distance myself with a lot of awe or fear of something. Those are the emotions of the heart. Even if somebody's not so capable of experiencing highly charged emotions of the heart, they're able to experience a second kind of emotions of the mind. What does it mean, emotions of the mind? Intellectual inclinations, intellectual attachments. In other words, raw intellect is objective. Raw intellect doesn't have any attachment to something. It should be impartial. You're trying to process and think through something objectively. Later, once you've accomplished and fulfilled and completed that task, the intellect, the mind, can start to build an attachment. an inclination towards something, an attraction towards something. It's no longer impartial, but it's partial, intellectually partial. And that twist, that attachment that exists still in the mind, it's not so much yet a feeling of the heart, that too is a kind of emotion. It's an intellectual emotion. And so a person who truly goes through a thorough, honest contemplation, study, meditation about God and about the Torah and about truthful ideas, they will always arrive at an intellectual emotion, a kind of attachment, a commitment of the mind, even if it's not able to arouse the expressive, revealed feelings of the heart. And that intellectual emotion is sufficient to create the fuel to create a true relationship with God and to serve as the wings to ensure that their mitzvah and their deeds soar to heaven and become one with their Creator. Because what can happen, and as Alter Rebbe is very expressive in his explanation over here, even in that state of the intellectual emotions, it's possible for a person to build the conclusions and the feelings where they yearn to cleave to God with a love that is like fiery flames, a desire and a longing and a passion to cleave to their Creator. And in a way, in a sense, that they don't want to be here. They feel like being in their body and in this physical world is sort of a distraction from who they truly are, where they truly want to be. And it's those very powerful yearnings and stirrings, even if it's not heartfelt, but it's still conclusions and attachments and inclinations of the mind. Since they are the ones that inspire the person to do the mitzvah, to master their words, their thoughts, and their actions, to do the right thing and refrain from doing the wrong thing, since they are the ones that fueled it, they too serve as the wings to be able to carry them to heaven and ensure a genuine attachment and connection and bond with Hashem. So that concludes today's class. And I'll just add one twist. It's a Kabbalistic twist. Alter Rebbe brings in a footnote over here. But it can explain a lot, and we will just do this very briefly. Why is it that some people are very emotionally intelligent and gifted and expressive, and they can wear their hearts on their sleeve, and they're able to engage in warm, passionate, excited emotions, and some people are not. Some people don't experience it that way. And it's not a good thing or a bad thing. Each one comes with their challenges, and in terms of relationships, one kind of person works well in one relationship, one that works well in a different kind of relationship, different kinds of people, of course. Why is it that way? Because every soul comes from the source in heaven. Every soul comes from the Sfirot, as we learn, from the higher worlds. And in the higher worlds, in the Sfirot, in sort of the God persona, God also has two kinds of emotions. God has the emotions that are the revealed and expressed emotions. We learned about the 7 Sfirot of emotions, Chesed, Devorah, Tiferet, and those are already the way they're expressed into revealed emotions. But God also has the intellectual emotions, the emotions that are hidden, meaning they're still part of the mind, they haven't yet carried over and spilled forth to the heart. Those emotions are still just intellectual inclinations. And so different souls are rooted in different sources. Some souls that are rooted in their source in the revealed emotions of God, they're the souls that are capable of being much more emotionally expressive. If your soul is rooted in one of the intellectual emotions of God, then you're not capable of being so much emotionally expressive, but rather you have the emotions of the mind. So that's an interesting thing to think about, and it explains a lot about people, and something that needs to be discussed and developed further. This was the teaching for Shabbat. Have a Shabbat Shalom. God bless you, and have a wonderful day.